Welcome in to the DNVR Avalanche Podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Use code DNVR to sign up for a new account to get amazing odds boosts every single day. AJ and Rudo coming to you. Look, I really didn't want to talk about trades that have happened until the trade deadline, but the NHL decided they didn't want to wait until the trade deadline. A significant portion of the big names have already come off the board, particularly today with... is not official, but all but confirming that Patrick Kane is headed to New York. We'll get into it. Obviously, there's been a pretty heavy tilt so far in this silly season with a lot of the bigger names, at very least, if not the majority of trades, with players heading out east. AJ, do you want to just start with the Rangers? Do you want to get into this Patrick Kane stuff and some of the other moves they've made so far?
Are you going to be really surprised when I tell you that literally while we were getting this started, another trade happened?
Am I surprised? No. Am I annoyed? Yes.
Yeah. Mojo goes from Washington to Minnesota for a third.
Totally get that from Washington's side. They've decided to sell. A little bit weird to me from Minnesota.
That's their solution.
Yeah.
It's an odd one.
I don't know what that really solves for Minnesota, but...
Well, and I don't know, I guess they've been giving a lot of ice time to, the Jordan Greenways of the world, where none of their depth have... Big shock, those guys have not all repeated massive...
unbelievable career years they had.
Massive anomalies of seasons that they had last year.
Yeah. They're probably still a wild card team unless Calgary gets it together. But
I think I've been saying it all year. I expected Minnesota and Winnipeg to flip spots. Now they have.
We'll see if that lasts or not. For
we will,
sure,
but it's. I think both of them are playoff teams.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
It's just which one's going to be
the 3 seed. Sure.
And, who plays Dallas in the first round? This is just me continuing to express confidence that the Avalanche are about to win the division. They're about to go on this run.
Hard to not feel pretty confident. I haven't done my Twitter video for today, but spoilers, their chances to win the division went up a lot last night.
I bet they did, man. given Dallas's even an OTL.
Yep. They gave 1 point on them with the games in hand that they have.
And they have 2 head-to-heads as well, and so
it's very much win those, and you're in the driver's seat for this division, basically.
Yeah, they really are anyway. And it's
you're not wrong.
If Dallas wins those, they break even. The cars are nose to nose, right?
Yep.
It's really Colorado's just won their way into this position, and the teams in front of them stopped winning games.
Yeah, it genuinely, you look at over the last really 20 games, but if you look at the last 10, Dallas and Winnipeg have not been doing what they need to do.
Yeah, I mean, those were teams that had point percentages in the low 700s, high 600s, and are now in the low to mid 600s.
For a minute there, they were floating around 5.
Where the Avs were at 5.
And now they've pushed up to the high 700s, really.
They're now on the season, they're in the mid 6s, and you're like...
Oh, they coming.
Yeah, we talked about it. They're going to chase these guys down, and we thought it was going to take 25 games.
Turns out it might take 15.
But those teams just stopped winning hockey games.
Yep.
And they stopped winning, Dallas and Winnipeg and Minnesota continues to kind of float around the same pace.
Yep.
And you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, so Dallas, Dadonov for Gurianov is the move that they've made so far. Minnesota gets Marcus Johansson out of Washington, who is at this point a pure bottom 6 guy. Lots of versatility in his game, but a bottom 6 guy.
He's just doesn't quite have what he used to have anymore.
I think Minnesota did a great job. Hey, they had 2 salary retention deals where they paid
Yeah, they got picks for flipping dudes.
They paid about $150,000 in of real money for draft picks for a 4th and a 5th, I believe.
Yep.
And then they pay a 3rd for Mojo.
Just weird asset management there for sure.
And it confuses me because why is that guy worth a 3rd?
When your cap is...
And like, why is that guy worth a 3rd to you?
Right.
In what way is he really pushing your roster forward? It's kind of just an odd...
Especially for a team that's just caught in the middle right now. They're still working through their cap of their dead hits from Suter and Parise. Matt Dumba sure seems like he's probably gone at the end of this season.
Well, and I mean, we keep hearing that Ottawa is like...
hard up.
For a defenseman.
Yeah.
And Matt Dumba is like, okay, I understand Ottawa's not looking to necessarily invest in a guy that's going to leave.
Right.
But I guess it just seems odd to me that they
haven't tried to shop him at all.
Well, that they just don't seem in a hurry to do it.
Yeah, I don't. I also don't understand why they're healthy scratching the guy on a semi-regular basis. But
yeah,
it's a very weird situation. But I mean, you kind of already alluded to it. The West has really done very little.
Yeah.
So far at this trade deadline. You mentioned Minnesota just picking up Mojo.
Well, and Edmonton this morning gets rid of Puljujärvi for... I like Patrick Puistola. He's a good prospect. He's a good goal-scoring prospect. That does not help their NHL team.
Not actively. That's
so
for sure.
Edmonton, for the moment, obviously we still have a couple of days here, but Edmonton, for the moment, gets worse.
And the rumors about them trying to go out and get EK, I don't know if it makes them better in the right ways.
I mean, I don't know. It just seems like they can't make that. They can't really make that work. So,
yeah,
we'll see what they do. But for the moment, Edmonton's a little bit worse. Yep. Nashville kind of throws in the towel. St. Louis throws in the towel.
Both have become sellers at this point.
Exactly. It's really...
You have really the three big moves. I don't know how Dadonov's really not a big move for Dallas.
I mean, out west, it counts as the big move right now.
It's Ivan Barbashev to Vegas, and it's Nino Niederreiter for Winnipeg.
Yeah, and Jack Johnson to Colorado.
And look, the reason I didn't want to do this show is because more is to come.
Right,
but. So far, the West has not kept up with the East at all. So,
well, and to be honest with you, I think why is interesting. One, because the West is just in a different place.
It's not teams a bloodbath in the West.
So, let's run through them real quick.
Yep.
So we've got Vegas at the top.
Yep.
Mark Stone injury really hurts them.
Yep.
It really does hold them back a little bit. They've had consistent injuries on their defense all season as well.
Goal.
And that started even before the year got going.
Yep. That was with Leonard.
And they just put Laurent Brossoit back on IR today.
Because he got hurt after playing 4 games. Yep. It's bad. It's bad.
It's really... But Vegas is in the situation where, money-wise, they don't have a ton of space asset-wise. They did what Colorado did. Instead of being like, hey, here's a future pick, they go and get Barbashev for for Zach Dean, the guy they drafted in 2021's first round.
Fun fact, they've now traded 5 of their 6 first-round picks in their history.
The only guy left standing is Brendan Brisson. And you're like, if they're going to make a big move at this deadline,
it might be him.
Guess who's going? Who's in the crosshair here? So you're looking at Vegas and you're saying they're definitely a buyer. That's a team that definitely wants to continue to get better.
Yep.
So TBD there. All right. You look at the 2 division leaders, Vegas and Dallas, same spots.
They're buying.
They're both buyers. They both have some space to buy. Dallas is in a different spot where they've got prospects coming.
Yeah.
That they really like. Maverick Bourque and Logan Stankoven are 2 really, really fun offensive prospects that I don't think they're in a hurry to get rid of. And so, but you also, if you're the Stars, you're like, okay, what's the transition here?
Yep.
Because, you do look at the breakout that they've gotten from Wyatt Johnston this year.
Well,
Like, badly needed.
and you can see
Depth scoring
you
from
can
them.
see the future core pieces of that roster coming through.
Yeah.
But they're still, I don't even want to say stuck, because you've seen better years out of Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn this year.
Well, and it's really been Ben.
Yeah.
Sagan continues to lag behind.
I mean, he's okay, but
He's okay for $9 million, though.
not making his money for
Like,
sure.
Jamie Benn, you're at least like, hey, the guy has... He may not
his
have lived,
keep, yeah.
may not have lived up to the contract, but he's been a vital part of their secondary scoring. I saw the other day before last night's game, 66% of their goals have come from 6 guys.
That's pretty top heavy.
Like, you need help. They need help there. So it's I think they're in an interesting spot too, but a buying spot. But they're going for it. Like, they're in a window where they're saying,
yeah, there's no doubt about that.
they're in a window where they're saying, hey, we want to take this seriously, but also Heiskanen is really young. Robertson is really young. Ottinger is really young.
Yep.
Kind of their core guys that they're Rupe Hintz is in his prime.
Yep.
It's really like Pavelski.
He's the super old guy, and
He just keeps doing his thing, though. So you're like, okay, well, it's working out.
As long as it works, it works. You do feel like there might be a little bit of a clock there with the end of Ben's and Sagan's contracts coming up not too far from now.
Yeah.
But
They're looking at it like, look at all that money we're about to get.
they can bring in their prospects and go pay other guys. So.
Yeah, and defensively, they've got a lot of money tied up in S. Lindell and Ryan Suter, Miro Heiskanen. Like, their defense is pretty. They traded a first-round pick for Lundqvist, who's been
A guy.
like fine for them this
Yeah.
year. We'll see how he develops, but I think their early return is. I think they're encouraged by what they've gotten, but
it's got to take more steps
for it to pay off. Yeah, they definitely want to see more. But Dallas is in like a good spot as an organization. Hey, they're competing. If the rest of the West wasn't so weak, they would be on their way to like 100-point season right now, where you're like, hey, this is a good team that just needs to take another step.
Yep.
But
instead, they're leading a division.
they are right. They're leading a division right now at the moment, and it's more about the fact that everything around them has kind of gone sideways. So Vegas and Dallas going for it, whatever. Okay.
Yep.
Colorado is firmly
Clearly
in the
going
middle
for it.
of a cup window,
Yeah.
a legitimate championship contention era for the Avalanche.
Yep.
They're going for it.
There's no doubt there.
Winnipeg is in one of the more fascinating spots in the NHL.
Yeah.
So over the next 16 months, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Mark Scheifele, Blake Wheeler, Connor Hellebuck
are
all set to hit free agency.
Yep.
Okay. Dubois is an RFA, unsigned at the end of this year, and there's all this talk about Montreal and the Canadiens, and he doesn't want to sign. And every interview he's ever given on the topic has been, look, I'm not a guy who thinks about
Those things before.
this.
Yeah.
I'm worried about what's in front of me right now, and that's it.
Yep.
Everything else on their roster, they have to do it. They have to go for it.
Yep.
They have to go for it because
the big one's Hellebuck, right?
Well, Hellebuck, Scheifele, like you're gonna lose. You could lose your top 2 centers and your star goaltender in free agency.
Yep.
That is a city and an organization that has struggled
to keep pieces in
to
town.
convince players to stay long term.
Yep.
Now each of those guys has a post ELC long term deal that is expiring, so those guys can look at it and say, "I've given the first half of my career."
Yep.
Going into my prime, I've given this to this organization. It hasn't worked. I'm moving on.
Yeah.
And the Jets could be the big seller. They could be St. Louis next season.
year. Yeah.
If they aren't in a serious spot and they don't think they can bring some of these guys back, could you imagine at the trade deadline a year from today, Connor Hellebuck is on that thing?
That would be. I mean, that has to be the biggest goaltender out there at the deadline
Since Ryan Miller.
Yeah. Like, it would be pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I can't help myself but wonder what Edmonton would do.
I mean, there's a number of teams, right?
For sure.
What would Seattle do for something like that?
No kidding.
So, anyway, the Winnipeg kind of is forced into, like, they buy on Niederreiter.
Because they have no choice.
They need another defenseman, but yeah, they are in just this spot that they're in. They have to do this.
Yep.
Okay? So they have to do this. Minnesota. What do we make of the Wild?
A team doing a really good job of keeping themselves in the Calgary zone.
And, like, given their cap restraints,
that's about as far as you can reasonably expect them to go.
Something kind of admirable about, like, hey,
we're trying anyway.
Right. like we're not kicking the bucket. We're not trying to give in and tank and whatever. They're making an honest go of Kaprizov's prime.
Yep.
Respect. I hate everything about that stupid franchise in that state. Respect.
I can give them all the respect in the world if they want to be the 8th seed and get eliminated in the first round.
It's party time. All right, so but they're not a team that we're talking about as a serious buyer.
They just don't have the
not
space
a big
to
mover
really
shaker.
Be able to do
like
that. Yeah.
Their big acquisition over in the offseason should be Marco Rossi.
And then actually play him when they get him up there.
It was supposed to be this year, but but yes, like Marco Rossi should be one of the big next steps for them.
Yeah,
they've got some really fun offensive players that could come in and maybe add some firepower and some punch to their lineup over the next few years. But for the moment, we aren't expecting a drastic change
in either direction, really,
from the Wild. But they should not be serious players. So as an organization, they're not there.
Yep.
You should do this before we get into the Pacific.
All right. We are brought to you by the amazing people over at Breckenridge Brewery, the official beer of DNVR. Get over there. You can find 8 different kinds of their beer on tap here at the DNVR bar. Or you can also get over and find it at a local liquor store near you, anywhere in the 50 United States. Yes, even Alaska and Hawaii. They are out there. So go get yourself some Breck Brew. Go to breckbrew.com.
Alaska's not a country?
It is not a country. Man, it is part of the U.S.
Next thing you're going to be telling me is that papayas and carrots are not the same.
You know what? You know what else is in a country? Texas.
Look, Texas was a republic, sir.
It ain't that anymore either.
Don't tell us that.
Get your Breck Brew wherever you are. They have a flavor for everybody. Go check them out. Also brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 rated sportsbook app out there. You can go over there. You can bet $5 on anything, and you get $200 in free bets when you sign up for a new account with the DNVR code I mentioned. $200 in free bets is a lot of free bets to play around with. I'm excited. I'm excited for baseball season to come back. That's my money-making game.
You've been keeping an eye on some spring training?
A little bit. Not a ton, but a little bit.
We don't really have time right now.
Yeah.
But, like, I did watch about 3 innings of a spring training game that did not involve the Rockies or Astros yesterday, just because it was on.
I was watching a little bit of the Yankees game at intermission the other night, but it'll be fun. Look, DraftKings style. All right, here's my strat. First of all, figure out the teams who have decent bullpens. So don't ever do this with the Rockies. Wait till the 7th or 8th inning of a baseball game, and then just bet the under, because closers are really good at baseball.
I am really curious to see. No,
you're good.
It doesn't take away from your point here, but I am curious to see how the changes. The changes in baseball,
with the pitch clock and everything.
Well, and especially relievers, and with guys getting on base, the way that a lot of relievers are slow to the plate.
Yep.
Because they don't have to worry about it so much.
Yep.
I will be really fascinated to see how running games change baseball, change late game baseball.
Like you said, especially with relievers, a lot of those dudes you're talking about like 30 seconds plus it takes these guys to get the home plate.
Well, and you're talking about guys who in their entire pro careers have not really had to stress the running game at all.
Yep.
And I think it's going to make a big comeback, and it could be a really fun thing to bet on.
There you go with the pitch clock. Start betting on box. Lots of box.
Oh man, that poor guy last year.
Go over to DraftKings, use the DNVR code. Must be 21 or older. Colorado only. Other terms, restrictions, and conditions apply. See the show notes down below for details of a gambling problem. Call 1-800-522-4700. And of course, it's void in Ohio. Also, when you win some money from DraftKings, take it down to Illegal Pete's. Get yourself a delicious burrito or some happy hour margaritas from 3 to 6 p.m. Illegal Pete's has 10 locations here in Colorado. There's one just a couple blocks from the bar. It's a great place to grab some lunch before you come on down to the bar to have a good time for watching whatever sporting event it is you want to come over here for. So check out Illegal Pete's. They have fresh, delicious ingredients, something for everybody. Go get it today. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche Podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. All right, AJ, let's get into the Pacific.
Yeah, so we're kind of just talking about why the West is where it is right now.
Yep.
Seattle's in year 2 of its existence.
Yep.
They made a bunch of smart moves in the offseason to beef up an offense that just had no identity and no punch last year. They just couldn't score goals.
Everything they've done has worked well, except for they continue to get torpedoed by goaltending.
Yeah, their goaltending continues to be a struggle. Martin Jones is
he's sneaking them by.
Well, how funny is it that Martin Jones gets brought in because Chris Drieger
blows
out his knee at World Championships.
Yeah. And somehow Martin Jones has been their best goaltender.
Yeah. So it's kind of fascinating. Oh, Frankie. But where Seattle is, like, it's a great story if they get in. They probably should get in. Like that's a good hockey team.
Is there some obvious lessons learned from Vegas here that they won't overcommit to?
Well, and Ron Francis is just such a different.
He's very much not the guy to go out and make moves.
Yeah, it's just such a different conversation. I think that
fair enough.
But you're talking about like Seattle should be
competitive at least
in some level of buyer. You know, they have so many second round picks.
Yeah,
where it's like, look, second round picks are. We've seen the Avalanche very, very, very effectively
move them for a lot of valuable stuff. Yeah,
exactly. For guys that you're not talking about tip top high end players all the time. You know, obviously Devon Taves became that when he got here.
It's those guys that have the very high upside. Taves, Burakovsky.
Yeah,
those before Burakovsky blew up.
Yeah, and you do look around the league, and hey, those were Nino Niederreiter goes for a second round pick, like a good player that will be in their top 6 right away.
Yep.
So, you are having a conversation about Seattle where they could buy, but it's not going to fundamentally change them, and it's not going to be the big splash.
Yeah,
it's just going to be, hey, they get a little bit better because they still have a robust farm system that's on the way. Year 2, Matty Beniers. Next year, like they're still on the come up here.
Yep.
There's no need for them to do that. LA, driven largely by that farm system, they're still waiting for the big breakout of Quentin Byfield. They're trying to wait out the Alex Turcotte injury issues to see if he's going to break out.
Yeah.
They've got they've got so many young guys. Brant Clark isn't even in the NHL yet. Like so much youth still, and LA just doesn't seem interested in messing with it.
They don't want to sell off their future to try and make more of a push now, basically.
Yeah, and they're looking around them, and in the Pacific Division,
they're watching a lot of teams in their last year or going the wrong way.
Exactly, where you're like, Vegas is kind of at the tail end of their contention window here, we think.
Yep.
Anaheim and San Jose are fully
in
embracing the tank.
Yep.
There's really nobody that you're long-term afraid of unless Edmonton
figures something out,
and does something really smart and actually figures out how to balance that team a little bit.
Does not include going out and get Erik Karlsson.
Right. So they are, they
showing a bit of patience here. Perhaps
Seattle and LA should be looking around, going, "This is kind of our division. Like we
get to run this place starting next year.
We should really be consistently competing." Edmonton just doesn't have the space for stuff.
Yep.
For a lot of big stuff.
A little bit more now that Puljujarvi's gone, but still not a ton.
Right, but they still have a lot of money in, money out considerations that have to go into it. And Calgary has to kind of figure everything else.
Yeah,
still.
who even are they now?
Yeah,
I
the
don't
year
know.
of transition, and for me, I think the smart thing here is a coaching change.
I don't disagree.
Instead of trying to redo an entire roster to fit.
I mean, we
that
talked
guy.
about this off air with Mackenzie Weegar and his
Yeah.
switch of styles, how it's affected him in a negative way. So,
Right.
yeah, and they have to find a way to get more out of Huberdeau than they're getting.
Totally.
Just period. Otherwise, they're in big trouble.
Definitely. Both of them. I mean,
Yeah.
it was such a fascinating deal. And right now, it's funny because both teams are disappointed.
Not in great spots.
But Florida absolutely looks.
They've gotten everything you could ask out of Kachuk. He's
Exactly.
not why they're struggling. Yeah.
You certainly don't pinpoint those problems on him.
Yep.
But yeah, so when we talk about the West and why it is where it is, it's really a fascinating discussion of like organizations just being honest with themselves.
Yep. Know where you're at and make the appropriate moves to get to where you want to go.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not that complicated.
And we saw with both St. Louis and Nashville, we saw the rare case of
where they actually pulled the trigger
like
on being a seller. Yeah.
veteran teams that just weren't lying to themselves.
Yep.
And they weren't leaning and using their fans as cover and saying, we owe it to our fans to try and make the postseason. You know, we're not trying to get those two extra. I think Nashville got so embarrassed by Colorado last year that they were like,
There's no point.
is this worth it to try and when Johansson got hurt and needed surgery?
Just going to get bodied
Like,
again. Yeah.
Is it worth it for us to go in there, be worse than they were last year?
Play 4 games in the first round and be done.
Yeah, we have 2 home games that our fans aren't going to take seriously because Colorado's going to come in and wax us again.
Yeah. Not great, Bob.
Yeah, so they're in a fascinating spot. Let me ask you a serious question
Okay.
about Nashville.
Yeah.
You've got Yaroslav Askarov in the AHL. Mm-hmm. You believe he's the truth. You believe he's the next guy for you.
Yep.
When do you start with the UC Saros offers?
Yesterday.
Yesterday?
Yep.
Okay.
If I'm Nashville, I'm seriously considering the nuclear option at this point.
Johansson, Granlund, Saros,
Duchesne, yep.
So you just signed Philip Forsberg for nothing.
Yep. You went for it. This year happened. You realized, oh, I messed up. The quickest way back to where you want to go might be burning the whole thing down.
Have there ever been more long-term contracts where they got signed and the teams immediately shifted gears than JT Miller in Vancouver and Philip Forsberg in Nashville?
The JT Miller one is
Predictable.
wild that Vancouver committed to that. Yeah.
It was all very
It was,
predictable.
you could see that one coming a mile away. And
Yep.
and it wasn't, no one would have been shocked by Nashville regressing this year, but I certainly thought they were still a playoff team.
And it looked like they were trending towards maybe pushing for a wild card spot, and the Johansson injury was just like,
This is the
too
end of
much.
this. Yeah.
But
yeah, both of
they're
those
in
look
such
really bad.
It's so interesting that you can look at both Vancouver and Nashville, say, and to maybe to a lesser extent Calgary, depending on what they decide
Yeah,
to do.
they have
in
to
a
make
year or
their
two.
decisions still.
But you could say, look at all the talent on there. Where if they decided we can't do this, we need to change our approach. We need to
Yeah.
whatever, and they just decided to say, hey, we're gonna sell. Like that dispersal of talent could totally change the balance of power.
Absolutely could reshape the entire NHL.
Right.
Now the other side of this conversation is, if you're following the Avalanche model, when they were in that spot, they didn't really sell. Yes, they moved Matt Duchesne, but it's not like they blew up their entire core to go out and make this version where they've become champions.
Yeah.
So maybe you don't have to move out every single piece.
Jesse, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, if you want to jump on.
What are your thoughts on?
Hi.
I guess we should make sure your microphone's
Yeah, is
on
it
first.
actually on?
Okay.
What are your thoughts if you're, because we're talking about Nashville kind of having to stare down the barrel and be honest with who they are and what's true today, but not just today, but tomorrow. If you're Nashville, do you field calls on UC Saros, knowing that you have Askarov in the AHL?
Wow, that's an excellent question.
Thank you.
Having Askarov waiting, how far out do you think he is?
To be honest with you, I wouldn't know. I just have not followed him at all. This like totally off my radar, right?
So I guess
but like knowing he's there,
right. I guess that would be the conversation that I'd have internally. If you think he's 2 years away, then I think you at least take the calls. If you think he's anything more than 2 years out from being able to step in at the NHL level in a meaningful way, then no, I'm holding on to Saros, because I think without UC Saros, that's a pretty bad team. And so, yeah, if you feel that you can have Askarov making an impact at the NHL level by, what year is it? By 2025, then yeah, take the calls.
how much does what's happened with, because we've seen two really high-profile young goaltenders go different directions with Jake Ottinger and Spencer Knight.
Yeah.
And how much do those experiences, now obviously
How old
every
Saros?
guy's different. Saros is 26, I believe.
Oh, fuck. I mean, he's still so young.
Yeah, but he's coming up on needing a serious
Payday
raise.
day.
Right.
And the way that he's played, you're like, hey, we don't necessarily need to sign this guy to a real deal here, because we have a guy that we love.
Right.
That we think is going to take his job. And Saros is the kind of goalie where he's so reliant on his athleticism that as he ages, you wonder when he gets into his 30s.
Yeah.
You know, because Connor Hellebuyck going into his 30s, you're like, I'm not super concerned here.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. It's just that team, and I mean, the three of us have talked about it now for multiple years. We thought that team, the moves that they had been making over the last couple of years were all just like didn't really add up. And I think that they've now put themselves in this really weird position where you've got some high-end, expensive players, but you very clearly don't have the roster to even compete.
Yeah.
They got smoked in the first round last year. They're going to miss the playoffs by a fair bit this year. Well, they'll hang around. They're going to miss the playoffs this year. Gosh, I don't know. What's hard is that Saros is only 26.
I think he's 26.
I mean,
Mid-20s.
Mid-20s, yeah. I mean,
If it turns out he's 29.
Yeah,
it changes everything.
If you're off by
Seriously, it
3
changes
years,
everything.
that's a big gap of difference.
It's like, because
Let me just double check.
at 25 to 27 even, do you almost even have the conversation of, do we move Askarov?
He is 27. He turns 28 in April.
Yeah, I still think that's fine. For a goalie, that age is more than fine.
Yeah. But the thing that AJ brings up about, this was always my concern with Matt Duchene in the early years here. The first thing to go is that agility and your legs and all that shit. And
For a smaller goaltender.
right.
Yeah.
And it's the same kind of thing here when you're talking about Saros, is where it's like, okay, cool, he's going to be 28. By 32, is he the same guy at all?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. And maybe he is.
Yeah.
Maybe he is.
Athletes are aging better than ever, man, when they take care of themselves.
Well,
It's
like,
pretty impressive.
I even look at Varley, like even with like the big injury like crater there in the middle of his career, since he's gotten to Long Island, like he's been good,
relatively
and
healthy,
relatively
yeah.
healthy. Yeah.
He really hasn't. They gave him $5 million, and I don't think they've regretted it, honestly.
Yeah. No, seriously.
I hate to rush us, but we do have to move along a little bit here.
That's a fascinating topic.
Yeah.
We
Well, you missed Winnipeg, where I think Winnipeg is the most interesting team in the NHL.
What's that?
Like the spot that they're in
well,
right
we
now.
have
with,
a
like,
meeting.
their own realities versus, like, they aren't on the same kind of clock as every other
Right.
NHL team.
Right.
So I think they're just in such a spot. But I do think that with the way that the East has won, the main thing that the East has done this year is that they have blown through a ton of assets.
Yep.
Yeah.
They have absolutely worn out the draft cupboard. And so when you talk about this dispersal of talent, if Nashville goes into cellar, if St. Louis wants to further strip it down, if Minnesota decides to move on, whatever may happen, if Vegas actually ever decides, hey, we can't do it anymore, whatever, right? You're talking this dispersal of talent is going to be west to west.
So my last thing on now, if you are going to start feeling those calls on Saros this summer, you have to start tearing it down.
That's what I said.
Duchesne,
Yeah.
Johansson, Fiala, not Fiala, Forsberg, like everybody. I don't give a shit that he just signed that extension.
Well, and that's
Like,
I
it's
wonder
everybody.
what Forsberg's value would be
With that contract
with that
in place.
contract
Yeah.
already
Done.
done.
What's the number on it? It's not crazy, right?
I think it's 9.
I thought it was closer. Yeah. I mean, regardless, at next year's deadline, you're that much closer to the cap taking a jump. Like,
Yeah.
I think you could start offloading some of these dudes this summer at the draft. And then, yeah, if you're going to do Saros, you got to just start over because
Teams should pay for trade deadline insurance. I should pitch that to Bacchus and Shanker.
it's not a bad idea.
You know, probably not realistic. But if you've been in a situation where you have suffered an injury and you're not at fault, whether it be a car accident, motorcycle, even a rideshare situation, or if you're at work and an injury occurred, call Bacchus and Shanker today at 222-2222 to get a free consultation. And if they think you have a case, they will take your case on for free. You pay nothing until you win your case. It literally costs you nothing out of pocket to get Bacchus and Shanker on your side and getting you what you deserve. They've been doing it for 25 years here in Colorado. If you've lived in Colorado for more than 10 minutes, you probably know who they are. And they've won over $1 billion for their clients in that time. So they're pretty good
I think it's
at getting
part of
money.
the Welcome to Colorado packet that
For
everybody
real.
gets when they move to the
No
state.
kidding.
They're like, hey, things you need to know about Colorado. Bacchus and
Bacchus
Shanker.
and Shanker. It's on the list. So check them out. Call the 2 number or go to coloradolaw.net to get a hold of Bacchus and Shanker today. And then once you get all healed up from whatever your injury is, go over to Game Time and get yourself some tickets to your favorite sporting event, whether it be here in Colorado, Avs, Nuggets, Rockies, Coors Field tickets coming up soon. You can get those for up to 60% off with Game Time. So they have amazing deals over there. And more than 15 million people have used the thing to get their tickets. So it's super reliable.
Just a few people.
Yeah, it's, a couple of people.
Yeah.
Not too bad. I think our YouTube views aren't even quite to 15 million yet. We're getting pretty close, though, so that's cool. Either way, though, Game Time, use the link down in the description. That helps us out a ton. You can also get tickets to any sporting event in the country, basically. There's tickets everywhere. Here you can see Avs tickets to upcoming games. When you go in, you can click on them. It'll show you your seats and what they look like. Does matter for some arenas. Ball Arena, there's not really a bad seat in the house, so you're pretty good there. But if you're going to Fenway or something, don't get the seat that's directly behind a pole. That's a bad seat.
There are bad seats in that house.
Yes, exactly. So make sure you're using Game Time and the link down in the description. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche Podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. We might have to speed run the East a little bit here, but
We've got several days of being on air.
yeah,
this
we'll
week
be back to break this down
Yeah,
more.
I really just thought it was more interesting to talk about why the West is kind of approaching it this way.
What was your theory?
I will add. Well, we ran through all the teams individually, kind of where they are, and then I think the thing that we didn't talk about is that there's a schoolyard bully in the West, and it's Colorado.
Yeah.
None of those dudes want to step to the king right now.
See, I think it's we talked about it a little bit yesterday on At the Rink. I think it's two things, and it's a combination of what you just said. I do think that for as much as people are talking about the West being wide open, which it is, I guess to an extent, I do think there is it's wide open and Colorado.
2 through 7.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's wide open regardless where the Avs end up finishing. I just genuinely, how many teams out West make you nervous in a 7-game series head to head against the Avs? Assuming health. Who?
Dallas.
Really?
Yeah.
See, not even.
Yeah.
I just don't think they can skate 7 games with the Avs.
The only thing that I'm nervous about with them is Ottinger. It's Ottinger and their ability, and it's the Pete DeBoer factor.
The Pete DeBoer thing does change it a bit.
Pete DeBoer is this year's demon the Avs can slay. It's fine.
I'm good with that if they do it, but until they do it,
They got to do it.
They make me nervous.
They got to do it.
See,
I still pick Colorado
Yeah.
in the best of 7 before I know what happens at the deadline. But they're the only one that makes me nervous. I mean, obviously, Connor Hellebuck in a 7-game series makes you nervous.
See, but again, to me, the Avs last year put all of that to bed. They went toe-to-toe with the best of the best. And what he said to Jared Bednar on the handshake line was, you guys were too good for me.
And this year's team isn't as good as last year's. And so that's where You get a little the margins are really thin in the postseason.
The thing is,
never know.
I don't know that any of these other teams in the West are as good as they were last year either.
They're not.
So
I guess I distracted myself. So that's one thing, and I think if you were to truth serum Western Conference GMs, they probably feel the same way. Like, gosh, I just don't know if we can move the needle enough to beat them.
Vegas, we did this, so like Vegas has to. They're in it. They just have to continue to be in this. Winnipeg has to go for it. Dallas is just too good not to.
So I get that a lot of teams in the West would be very happy with even making a conference finals.
Yeah.
But you have the conversation, we have to go through the Avalanche. And if we do that somehow, we end up with Boston.
Well, so and that's my thing. The reason why I think the West is just kind of taking a step back, because you can only have one team out of the East. So why go crazy to load up? Because you're not gonna. There's no Western Conference team that's gonna add anything now at the deadline that's gonna put them on the same level roster wise as Boston or Toronto or whoever your Eastern Conference team is.
A top 5 team in the East.
It's just not gonna happen.
Yeah.
So why spend the assets to try to load up on that? Or you say, cool, we're hoping we can get a ticket to the dance. If we can get through Colorado, we're just hoping that they are beat up enough coming out of the East that we'll have a fighting chance. That's just, I think that's what the conversation has been. Once those like first 2-3 deals all went west to east, I just think that the playoff GMs in the West were just like, you know what, kill each other from the inside. We're not gonna blow things up.
The couple teams at the top though should definitely be having that conversation of like, this may be our easiest.
I agree with. The Avs.
Edmonton, Vegas, Dallas, and Colorado and Winnipeg those are 5 teams that should be just going, we can dream on this.
Ooh, see, and I don't even know if I include those 5.
I would say Colorado, Vegas, maybe Edmonton.
Oh, see, I would say Colorado, then pick one of Vegas or Dallas.
I think Winnipeg is there.
Dallas is fair.
I think Winnipeg is there because they have to. Their timeline makes
I
them so
agree
that they
with you
have to do it. Vegas,
okay.
it's kind of this. I think Vegas is the same thing. Without Mark Stone, I don't think that they're good enough, but I think that they've invested so much into it that they're in this life.
I don't know
now.
if I'd say they're there, but they're in that mindset. I get where you're coming from.
What you just said about both Winnipeg and Vegas, I do agree with. You can't go backwards now. You can't put it back in the bottle.
And Edmonton, every year they don't do it with Connor McDavid. They get 1 year closer to losing him and wasting this.
Yeah, see, I think they messed themselves up in goals so much.
Well, and
I don't disagree.
In terms of both what they are capable of doing, in terms of fitting in under the cap, how they're able to distribute that talent, I think they shot themselves in the foot so incredibly hard with that. And I feel bad bagging on Jack Campbell because he seems like just the greatest dude, but that is not a good goaltender.
I mean, you knew that was not going to work for Edmonton the
right.
second.
And so I just think that, unfortunately for Edmonton, because I agree with you in principle, I just don't know what else they can do.
Yeah, and they're trying to like undo mistakes while getting better on the fly. And it's very, very hard to do.
Yeah.
And you also don't trust Ken Holland to do that job.
No.
It is a fascinating position that the West is in. The one thing that you are confident about is that Colorado is here and Colorado isn't going anywhere.
Yep.
I think apropos of what you said in terms of like this may be our easiest path, I have flashbacks to the 2002 Avalanche. That if you ask that team, they to a man, they all felt that they should have repeated that year and that Game 7 implosion. Had they gotten through that, they would have gone back to back. I think there's no way that isn't running through Joe Sakic's mind right now. Looking at the West, this will be the easiest path you'll ever have to getting back to the final at a chance to repeat. You know, with Chris McFarland doing the availability yesterday and really saying nothing.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of people that are like, oh, well, maybe that's just him setting the table for the team not doing much. I said, the team never does much at the deadline. They don't need to set the table for that. But I do genuinely think I'm normally fine with teams standing pat at the deadline because I think there's gross overpays. I don't think the Avs can stand pat here for what you said. You aren't going to get an easier run to the final than any of the teams out west this year.
You should listen to last night's post game.
Yeah.
Really?
It's the Avs' time, particularly if you're continuing to follow the path of teams like Tampa, who Tampa went back-to-back and made a third cup final by saying, screw it, we're going to overpay.
And every single team out there is terrified of them.
Pittsburgh.
Come playoff time.
Pittsburgh is my ultimate example of this. They multiple GMs back. The owner came out and said, if there's Crosby and there's Malkin, we're going for it. And they've banked 3 cups because of it, and they currently have the longest active playoff streak in the NHL. I think it's 17 seasons going on 18?
Yeah, something like that.
Of a deadline deal?
No. Pittsburgh making the playoffs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And AJ, you're totally right. Like
Crosby's whole career, basically.
we were all joking, not joking last year when we were talking about, look, if this gets to the finals, we'll probably all pick the Avs for our prediction show, but like I wouldn't put money against Tampa. And that was after watching the Avs just
be the better team objectively.
Up all season and through the playoffs. We knew they were healthier, they were more rested, they were this, they were that. And it was still like, but I'm just not picking against Tampa. You've got to go for it. I just think that Joe Sakic is sitting there like, Chris, I've been in this room before. We are not messing this up. We're giving ourselves a swinging chance.
I said yesterday that it would be irresponsible.
I agree.
And that they owe it to the guys in the room to give them the best possible chance.
You spent the last 15 years being responsible at the deadline.
Time to go. I know we have a couple super chats here related to this. So, okay. Sure.
You guys, there's no way you didn't talk about Kane, right?
We didn't.
Oh, really?
We've gone all week, man.
Well, because it's basically done.
Trade that has happened.
Yeah, Sandin goes to Washington for Eric Gustafsson in Boston's first round.
I'm like a huge believer in Sandin, so I don't know that I love that, but
I just think the first round was too much.
I definitely agree.
But
with
that's
that.
a young D that they get that's cost controlled for the next several years.
Yeah.
So what they lose in Dmitry Orlov, who's a very good player, they use that asset to get the young, what they think could be a younger version of him.
I totally get Washington's idea. The first rounder is a lot.
Well, this is what I was saying to you yesterday about give them picks so that they can use those picks to flip them for NHL players and kind of retool because they're going for it with Ovechkin there.
Yeah, I mean, if they can make it work, power to them. We do have one super chat, though. $5 from Cody, who says, my friend Sean wants to know who's more likely for the Avs, Hayes, Domi, or Schmaltz, and given the lack of activity in the West so far, are they needed? I think we already covered the second half of that.
Yeah.
For the record, this continuing belief that a 2C for the Avs is a luxury and not a need blows my mind. JT Compher is your 2C, has been very effective and everything.
There is no track record of that continuing.
And center depth is one of the most consistent things that gets repeated for Stanley Cup champions, and it doesn't stop it too. You need good centers.
I don't disagree with you. I just don't know if there's a clear upgrade over JT Compher out on the market.
Even if you get Max Domi and you put him in that job and you're saying, well, he's about the same. Great.
That still makes your depth that much better.
Oh, I'm with you.
So
I'm with you. But I'm just, that's my only thing with the LTA, or the LTIR shit. The 2C stuff.
This is what happens when you read and you talk at the same time. I think Domi's more likely because there's no term beyond it. They can just get him, see how he fits, and then figure it out later. Yeah. I think the Avs would be a lot more comfortable just trying to make a decision for this year.
It also gets more complicated with Hayes if you're asking a team to retain for multiple years. Same thing with Schmaltz. Even if they're
and your problem with Schmaltz is that Arizona will not retain on that deal.
Sometimes you just got to go with the easiest solution instead of involving a third team.
I think it's and I think it's Domi. Like I think if you're saying what's the path of least resistance, a guy that adds a semi-known quantity, and you've checked on him 1,000 times in the past.
As we bring up so often, the Avs love their guys.
Right.
For the record, that's also true of Kevin Hayes.
It is. Absolutely.
I mean, I wrote about it with Kevin Hayes like a month ago at the rink, and I was just like, I'm putting this in here because I know the Avs have tried to get this dude a half dozen times.
So when he signed out of college, it was the Avs finished second in that derby. And then when he got moved to Winnipeg that year as a rental, the Avs were involved in that. Yeah. So, like, when he was a free agent, the Avs were involved in that. Yeah. Like, the Avs have sniffed around Kevin Hayes' entire career. So it's no shock that he's involved once again, we're in this room with Kevin Hayes and the Avalanche.
Yeah.
But the same is also true of Max Domi.
Yep. Right.
And Max Domi is the easier.
He's more straightforward.
He's
for sure.
cheaper in every facet.
Deal for Hayes this summer if you want to, do whatever.
You can go get Domi and worry about the rest of it later. And if it works, then you don't care about Kevin Hayes.
Yeah.
So
I think it's Domi. I think it's a defenseman. Call it a day. They've done their depth on front and back end. They've actually, all those disappointing deadline deals we normally see for the Avs, those they've done ahead of time. Kincaid,
the small
Nieto,
ones,
and Jack Johnson. Those are usually the ones that they roll in late on deadline day. I think between now and Friday, it's 2 more pieces that'll be a little bit more impactful. Call it a day.
Done. Go forward.
Sprint to the finish.
$2 more from Cody clarifying that he is on the side of getting a 2C. Thank you very much.
Guys.
Yeah, it's we got to go. We appreciate all y'all hanging out. We'll be live tomorrow with a game, and there will be plenty more trade talk Thursday, and of course trade deadline Friday.
Yeah.
So
we have a 3 or 4 hour show planned for Friday. I don't know which one.
For Friday.
For the deadline?
Yeah, I think deadline day is the plan.
Let's just keep making that time smaller with every passing trade. It's like, son of a bitch.
It's still a fun time.
We're not talking about deals so that we have something to talk about in that window.
Right. Either way, we appreciate all of y'all, and we will talk to you tomorrow.